Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer here alongside Mike Gallagher to talk through Monday's 5-game slate, small slate of the week, I believe. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, just a 2-game slate. But only 5 games on the docket tonight, Mike. Still plenty of injury information to talk about. How are you doing on this fine Monday?
Doing great. Yeah, we just did a podcast with Tomer Azerly for the Clippers, and man, it's too good. So pumped for you guys to listen to that when it comes out. Got a lot of really good takes on Norm. If you're a Norm Powell fan, you're going to be loving that podcast. We talked him up, but yeah, got a interesting slate. A lot of blowout risk today. Should be interesting.
Yeah, and if you tilt the Lakers injury reporting like I do, hang around until the end when I get to ask Tomer point blank why they won't tell us who the hell is going to play on any given day. But let's get into it today. Let's start with Miami Heat because they have a bunch of questionable tags on the injury report. Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Caleb Martin, and Max Strus. We got word that Tyler Hero is not expected to play. So while that is a questionable tag still officially on the injury report, he sounds very unlikely. Caleb Martin, Jimmy Butler, Max Strus, less clear on their availability tonight. We know, and we've talked about, the Heat are a really deep team that has kind of gotten through all of these different injury and COVID different situations during the course of the year, and players have earned bigger roles. And as a result, we think we're going to see more of these spots where just one guy kind of steps aside and sits out because they have all these other guys to play. So do you think it's just Tyler Hero tonight that takes a step aside, or do you think there are more of these questionable tags that aren't available tonight?
Yeah, so before I answer that, just to put in some context, that like when I saw those questionable tags come out, there was a quote from Spo after the last game saying we want to make sure we use our depth getting to the All-Star break, which, like, oh my God, they're like, oh, someone's sitting, maybe 2 guys, and I think they may just do that, like, okay, let's sit a guy here, sit a guy here, sit a guy here. So then just the back injuries. Jimmy's played through this toe thing for a couple weeks now, not a back-to-back, should have a chance to play. Max Strus, quad contusion, listed with that last time, didn't play. Sounds like he's got a pretty good shot to play, according to him. Caleb Martin returned from that Achilles thing. Again, like, this could just be a maintenance thing and they want to overwork him. So I think he's got a good shot to play. But we'll see. Definitely think there's a possibility that someone else could sit. Tyler Hero's injury is new, and it is also the first time he's been listed with knee soreness in his career. He's had a couple knee bruises, so little concern there, especially given the way that they've been, really sending guys out for, long periods of time with Jimmy Butler's injuries and Lowry stuff earlier before the personal thing. So yeah, that's something to keep an eye on for Hero.
Yeah, and with Hero sidelined, like, they still have Jimmy, they still have Lowry, they still have Bam, they still have kind of all their main playmakers outside of Tyler Hero. So it might just shift a little bit more of a heavy stagger for the starting unit, just because Tyler Hero has been that key piece off the bench that they've relied on for a lot of scoring. So you might see like an earlier substitution pattern on Jimmy or on Kyle to kind of take some of the weight off. That's something that I'd expect to see. But otherwise, I think, if all these guys play, like, we kind of know what's been going on with Miami during the course of the year. From a DFS perspective, Jimmy and Bam and Kyle are going to have spurts where their price is attractive because they go through spurts where they're less productive, simply because there's so many guys to share the ball. And when one guy is out, you get a little bit of an extra boost. The matchup against Washington tonight should be favorable as well. That line moved from 4.5 to 6 overnight in favor of Miami, despite Miami having all these players questionable on the injury report. So
yeah, I'm actually so sold that Miami wins this game. I literally waited for that line to come up last night and took it. I think Miami handles their business. And I'll add this really quick. So like replacing Hero role wise, you're replacing like pure offense. So I mean that's more of a thing that could suit Max Strus and to a degree Gabe Vincent more than Caleb Martin, who's really their defensive guy.
Yeah, agree. On the other side of that game for Washington, they're going to be without Bradley Beal still. They're also without Daniel Gafford. There's no questionable tags on the injury report, but I did want to just talk quickly through kind of the center rotation for Washington, because I do think it's an important part for DFS. And the question that comes down to really is, are we going to get, how many true center minutes are we going to get between Montrezl Harrell and Thomas Bryant? Because I think we know when we're down to 2 true centers, we have to feel optimistic about one of these guys potentially outproducing their tag. The challenge is the time we had this before, when Gafford sat a game or was out of the rotation, Harrell and Thomas Bryant still only combined for like 38 center minutes. It wasn't like the full 48. So in a matchup against Miami, who likes to play very big, do you think we see closer to full 48 from Thomas Bryant and Montrezl Harrell? If so, there's going to be some potential value here from those two, even in a difficult matchup against Miami, just because they're underpriced.
Yeah, so Thomas Bryant, we haven't seen his minutes spike, but they've been losing a lot of games in a big way. We actually saw him benefit from that when he first started getting ramped up. They ran him for a long leash and long rotation. So I think if things go well, then I could see it getting close to 45-ish minutes for those two guys combined, which is great. Terrible matchup, but minutes wise, I think it could be good. But again, I think Miami handles it. So if you're trailing, you want to hit threes. So that kind of leans right into the Davis Bertans minutes possibility. But then again, Bryant shoots threes as well. So definitely could see him being a bigger piece of this puzzle for the center minutes.
The other big injury situation to monitor.
And just to add really quick, so I think they've been getting wrecked. Like you see Aaron Holiday starting, those minutes are so bad. And do you want to put Kuzma on Jimmy Butler a lot? Maybe not, right? Especially since you're going to need him so much for offense. So they really like Danny Obvious. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go a little bit bigger, move KCP to 2, he'll probably guard Lowry, and then they move Dia into the starting lineup, so to keep an eye on there.
The other big injury spot to watch tonight, I think, is in Chicago, where the Bulls are on the second night of a back-to-back. They're playing their fourth game in 5 nights, their fifth game in 7 days. They're in the midst of a brutal schedule, and into town come the Phoenix Suns. Just an absolute wrecking crew right now. The Suns are just kind of rolling through everybody. And this is a spot that sets up as a potential rest spot. Zach LaVine did not play yesterday with the injury issue. Kobe White's been kind of game time decisions and then ruled out yesterday. So we'll see if either of them are available tonight. But I could also see this being a mass rest spot for Chicago, just because you look at the schedule, they've got another back-to-back on Friday. On Friday and Saturday, they play again. So it's a very, very busy part of the schedule for the Bulls. They've been kind of hanging on to the top 2 spots in the Eastern Conference, but everybody else is coming for them. I mean, Milwaukee's coming. All these teams, Cleveland, have really come up. So I think this is just kind of a get through it. I'm nervous about this spot for the Bulls in many, many ways. Like I said, I think it could be a mass rest spot. What is your read on Chicago tonight?
Yeah, so like you said, they just had a back-to-back set, and then according to Billy Donovan, that's why Kobe White sat. So I think, given they had the front end of a back-to-back, it's just natural to sit him in the front end. I think he's got a good chance to play. He was at game time, as you mentioned. So I think Kobe White has a much higher chance to return and could start. I think they would probably limit him, though, given it is a groin strain, an injury that is very likely to be aggravated relative to other soft tissue injuries. So that's something to consider there. But yeah, Zach LaVine didn't really sound close, got ruled out early. He played through that back thing. It was clearly bothering him. We saw him play in that was it or Atlanta game or no the Toronto game. That was something to keep an eye on there. So I think he's less likely. So I mean, I would assume he's playing a ton, and we saw DeMar DeRozan, man. I mean, my God, this guy's his role is ridiculous. He's in the paint, not those 41 minutes, don't even do it justice. The amount of work he had to put in. And Billy Donovan actually asked him, "Yo, could I keep playing you?" DeMar was like, "Yeah, I'm good." So DeMar, not a good matchup. Obviously, if Zach's sitting, he's going to see a ton of Mikal Bridges. But yeah, we'll see if that line also, as you mentioned too before, they lost a couple of points too. But yeah, I mean, Javante's minutes should be pretty good. The Suma's minutes should be pretty good regardless if Kobe White comes back. If Zach doesn't go, I would see more usage to go around too, and a pretty tough matchup against the Suns.
Yeah, I'll just note that if all of the Bulls players, if it's a situation like yesterday, where LaVine is out, let's say White's back in the mix, you're going to have some guys that project as decent values here, and I would be cautious. I do think this is a potential spot where the game could get away from the Bulls, and I do think it's a potential spot that if it did, you could end up seeing one of those DeRozan 27, 28-minute night type situations where they just don't play the fourth at all because they really don't want to push it. The challenge is they don't have a lot of guys on their roster. So be careful here. This is a spot that I'm really monitoring the injury report. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some last minute sits too from Chicago tonight.
Yeah, should see a lot of minutes should be pretty good on Ayo, I think, kind of regardless, as I was saying.
Yep. And I think the young guys, I think Ayo, Javonte Green, I think Kobe White, I think those guys, their minutes should be fine. Kobe will be as much as he can physically handle. I don't think he'll be as limited. But yeah, it's a tricky spot for the Bulls tonight.
Yeah, also, I saw coming on Javonte Green. Really, Javonte, I was looking at his matchups. He's getting wrecked. I think he's a good defender, but just looking at the game logs, Tobias lit him up, LeVert lit him up. I think they put him on Siakam a little bit. He lit him up. Like, he's been running pretty bad. So, like, he's going to see a lot of Booker tonight. So it's something to kind of keep an eye on. We'll talk more about that later.
I think he's, I don't know. I think he's an okay defensive player who is getting a little bit bigger of a reputation than he deserved early in the season. All right. Other injury situations tomorrow night, Oklahoma City. We know they're without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander still, but Lou Dort is questionable on the injury report once again. They're also pretty thin in the front court, and they send Pokusevski down to the G League. So I'm interested to see if there's any shenanigans there that we get anybody back, or if they're willing to play like these tight rotations that they are forced to because they're just short on guys. The matchup tonight against Golden State is terrible. They're huge underdogs despite being at home. So there's blowout risk here as well, although Giddey has seemed to be blowout proof. He seems to just get his minutes kind of wherever. I would assume that would be the same for Trey Mann and some of these younger players that they're just trying to develop. And they don't have the front court depth to really not play Bazley a lot. So there's a chance that somebody here kind of hits if Dort is unable to go. If Dort is able to go, I think you'll see kind of some of the production spread out a little bit more and some of these increased price tags of late maybe be accounted for. What are your thoughts on Dort's availability tonight?
I think pretty good. I think that game he set out was because of a back-to-back. Call to face. I didn't see anything that was bad. I watched that game pretty closely in the Blazers game, so I think he's had a pretty good chance to play, which changes things. I think this almost certainly takes Ty Jerome back. I think they are going to want to start Darius Bazley. He would almost certainly get the Andrew Wiggins matchup, and then Giddey would be probably guarding whoever's at the 4. Whether there's Otto, we'll talk about that in a second, and then Jerome would. But I think I kind of covered that. But yeah, I think he's had a pretty good chance to play. So that changes the roles too. Like, Giddey's ball handling got cut down really bad in the Blazer game, with Dort getting a major increase. And Mark Daigneault said they want to have Lou Dort be a bigger part of the offense and handling. We saw last year, we saw some point. Obviously different now with Giddey in the mix. But and then obviously Dort's availability affects the other side. The last 2 games, he's limited Steph pretty well with OKC against the Warriors. So yeah, there's always a lot of factors in Dort. And then, as always, if you're betting lines, my go-to jam is if Dort's out, just bet the Thunder to not cover. So I'll be looking for that if Dort doesn't go.
Yeah, big line there as home underdogs tonight. On the other side for Golden State, Andre Iguodala, Otto Porter Jr. both listed as questionable. I just have a hard time imagining them bringing back Iguodala for a game against Oklahoma City. It just doesn't seem like the spot that you'd bring him back for personally. So I'm expecting to see some of these watered down bench, or condensed rotations that we've seen from the Golden State bench of late. Was Bielitsa's been out, and they've just had kind of naturally fewer guys on the bench to sift through. So you kind of know who's going to play in these instances. What are your thoughts on Iguodala and Otto Porter Jr.'s availability tonight?
Pretty good. They both returned to practice. Steve Kerr sounded really encouraged that they'd be available, but as you said, like, why? It's not a back-to-back, so that's something to keep an eye on. I think they're back. Maybe just be a little bit of a minutes limit there. Let me see their schedule really quick.
I think they have a few days off.
Yeah, I think so. So you may just sit them out and get them ready to go. Yeah, they're up back on Wednesday against Utah national TV game. So definitely seems like they could rest, but honestly, there's not a lot of fallout from that, especially on the Iguodala side. Doesn't play enough minutes. Not a big usage guy either. So it doesn't really change like the whole slate.
Speaking of Utah there, Jordan Clarkson, Rudy Gay, both questionable. One went through shoot around, one did not. Rudy Gay was the one who did not tonight. And then the question mark along Utah is also, they started Azubuike last game instead of Hassan Whiteside. Whiteside came off the bench. They split the center minutes right down the middle, 24 apiece between the two of them. So what are your thoughts on Clarkson and Gay's availability tonight? And how do you think the center minutes shake out between Azubuike and Whiteside in the absence of Rudy Gobert once again?
Yeah, as you alluded to, it definitely sounds like Clarkson is more likely than Rudy Gay is. Gay's had, he's older, knee injuries. So those are generally things you want to kind of take it easy on. Case in point, Iguodala, we just talked about. So I think he's probably sitting. Clarkson will probably come back. So then you're talking about Forrest going away. Jared Butler probably going away even more. But yeah, and then just a side note, like Mitchell looked great in like limited minutes. I thought he looked awesome for such a rhythm-based player, for him to go out and just look at that line, 8 of 10, 6, like over. Yeah, it's over 100 effective field goal percentage, just on all free throws, like so good. But yeah, the center stuff. So like, I didn't get to hear the presser. I was trying to find it to like get the full context, but the way the beats are like phrasing that, it made it seem like like Whiteside was going to probably start, but like they wanted to bring him up for maybe conditioning, maybe read between the lines a little bit too much. But I think he starts, and I don't think he's going to get big minutes. That back strain's an issue, so he probably won't get close to 30. But 28 minutes, I think it's definitely doable on the high end. And this Azubuike played pretty well in the last game, so maybe they do start him again. So should be handling most of those minutes, especially with that Rudy Gay. Should be pretty close to a split there.
The one thing that I'll note there is just I think when they've had Whiteside start in the absence of Gobert, his usage rate has been down quite a bit. And I think that's because really what they want, we've talked about this in terms of their offensive structure, really what they want from that center spot is somebody who's just setting a bunch of screens for all their main guys, for Donovan to run around, for Bogdanovic to get his looks and whatnot, and roll to the basket. And I think Azubuike might be a better fit for that. And then Whiteside might be a better fit in the second unit to generate offense, especially if Clarkson were to sit. But even if you take out Rudy Gay, now Eric Pascal can kind of fit Rudy Gay's role pretty similarly. But generally, look at that second unit. It's not a lot of shot creation and offense behind Clarkson, right? And obviously they stagger a little bit. But I kind of wonder if you just see Whiteside return to the reserve role, but with all the usage that we saw before that we haven't seen when he's been starting, and they kind of do it like that. And I don't think it makes a huge difference for his fantasy ceiling. I mean, I think you're trading some minutes for some usage, and I'd always rather have the minutes than the usage a little bit, but I don't think it's substantially different. But it wouldn't surprise me, especially like Azubuike's been playing well, and they might want to just reward him and make sure that he kind of gets minutes, and it's an easier role for him to be successful playing with the starters than it is him playing with the reserves, just because he's only going to get looks in very favorable situations, and he's just going to be asked to screen and play defense essentially.
And we actually got some injury news that just came right now from the Hornets. We got Cody Martin is going to be doubtful, as is James Bouknight. So it's not like too big a news, but Cody Martin not playing could tighten things up.
Yeah, certainly gives some of the ceiling back to like Gordon Hayward, because we know that they're willing to play like 10, and this is going to be a fantasy friendly spot tonight. It's actually the one game on the slate that I think will be competitive. I think there's going to be a lot of blowouts tonight. And, they are willing to play really tight. And so you take Cody Martin out and you could get, almost a 7-man rotation. Like you could get that from, especially against a Nick Nurse team that likes to play their guys tight. You could have a playoff level rotation tonight for Charlotte and Toronto on a slate where a lot of games are going to blow out. So that is certainly something we will talk about more on the DFS show tonight at 5 o'clock Eastern. The last injury situation I wanted to cover before we got out of here, we did get notice that Kemba Walker was going to rest tonight, front end of a back-to-back for the Knicks. His absence and removal from the starting lineup should slide Alec Burks into the starting lineup, would be my guess. Revenge game for Alec Burks, as he was formerly with the Utah Jazz. Should also open up just better ceiling in general for all the other guys, for Fournier, for Barrett, for Quickly, for Grimes, just in terms of minutes. But I will also say I'm very concerned about this spot for the Knicks. Front end of a back-to-back in altitude against the Jazz. The Knicks have not been playing very well of late, and their starters in particular all season long, they've got one of the weakest first and third quarter point differentials of any team in the league. On the front end of a back-to-back, that's a shaky spot for the starters, I would just say, because teams are more likely willing to pull the plug on the front end of a back-to-back knowing they have a game tomorrow. So even though removing Kemba Walker certainly increases the ceiling for some of these guys, I'm still tepid on the Knicks tonight. What are your thoughts on how this rotation shakes out and who benefits most?
I mean, it's a good matchup. The Jazz, since 2022 started, they're 25th in defense. They're terrible half-court defense. Like, that's pretty much what the Knicks do. So, without Gobert, they've been getting wrecked. So, I think removing Kemba changes a couple things. I think RJ Barrett's going to probably bring the ball a little bit more. I think Julius Randle could be a bigger part of the offense. We've even seen, Kemba's been like neutered as far as like offensive role goes. Like we haven't seen him do anything. So like from that, maybe the usage comes down a little bit, but just ball handling. The point I was going to make before I went on the side note was like Kemba Walker, like one time grabbed a rebound and like gave it to Randle. I was just like, yo, what? This is what Kemba Walker is now. But I'm with you that Alec Burks starts. I think it's more of a positive. I think you're putting better defender in Burks and more like. I just feel like that unit with Burks in there has more rhythm. So I think it's actually a positive. I think that their starting unit can kind of get in a better groove. with more of a Barrett focal point. We saw Barrett have an awesome game in national spotlight, so we'll see if that maybe is a factor there. But yeah, Barrett's going to guard Donovan Mitchell probably, and pick up a big offensive role. So I actually do think Barrett's you can play today.
All right. I think that'll do it for this small 5-game slate, but still filled with plenty of injury information. If you want to get our DFS takes, make sure to tune in behind the paywall at establishroom.com tonight at 5 o'clock Eastern as we break down the DFS side of things. If you are not subscribing to our premium DFS content, please at least subscribe to the YouTube channel here. It costs you nothing to do, helps us continue to promote and provide this free content for you, which we will do each and every Monday through Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern. We'll be back tomorrow to cover a much, much bigger slate, an unusually large Tuesday slate with myself and Mike Gallagher tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern. Until then, enjoy the NBA games, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Best of luck in your DFS and prop betting contests.